which is all the pension fund is interested in. And they did it for purpose, which was to increase the income to the pensioners. And so the pension fund industry were the final arbiters. If they didn't like what you were doing, you wouldn't succeed.
The pension funds discovered they could asset strip companies themselves without the need for takeovers, because they already owned the majority of shares. And they now proceeded to do this throughout British industry on a vast scale. They closed factories and downsized thousands of workers. The resulting devastation was irrelevant to them, because the only thing that mattered for the pension funds was the increased return for the pensioners. James Goldsmith went back to Mexico, defeated by a corporation that was more frightened of the pension funds than it was of him. In his anger, he now turned on the politicians. He became convinced that they had let loose something that had gone out of control. The markets, driven by the big institutions, were devastating society, all in the pursuit of an ever higher share price. Goldsmith conveniently forgot that this was exactly what he had been doing for 30 years.
If, purely for an economic doctrine, you have a situation whereby the economy grows, but you create poverty, unemployment, and you destabilize the society, you're in trouble. Look what's happened in the last 50 years. You see, people are not willing to look at fundamentals. When I was a boy, we were taught that irreversibly we were moving towards progress.
Yes.
That material wealth, material prosperity would solve our problems, would improve our way of life, and improve our civilization. And what have we done? We've destabilized our society. We've increased unemployment massively. We've totally destabilized our cities. Therefore, something must be wrong. And what has become wrong is that instead of the economy being there to serve us, we are there adoring, serving economic industries.
All right.
But meanwhile, the boom just carried on growing. The vast amounts of money flooding out of the City of London helped to create a consumer boom. And riding on the crest of this wave of money was the new owner of Harrods.
And also a very special guest, someone I want you to make yourself feel at home here, Chairman of Harrods, Mohammed Al-Fayed.
Has it been a good day so far?
Wonderful, wonderful. I think we're going to make £10 million a day.
It's
£10 million a day?
Today, £10 million we start, and we have £100 million of goods.
Mohammed Al-Fayed was now a rich and successful businessman. He epitomised the enterprise culture created by the Conservative government. He had also been accepted into society. Harrods sponsored the Windsor Polo Championships, and Fayed presented the prize himself to Prince Charles. There was only one problem, though: Tiny Rowland. Rowland wanted vengeance. The chairman of Rowland's company was Sir Edward Buchan. He was a Tory MP, and he was continuously attacking Fayed in Parliament, calling him a liar and a crook. So Fayed decided to fight back. He employed a lobbyist, Ian Greer. Fayed paid Greer to get MPs to defend him in Parliament.
Yeah, they put questions in the House of Commons. If somebody put question against me, they answer these questions and put also my side of the story. You fight fire with fire, I told you.
Did you pay them money?
Of course, of course, of course. How can they do the job for me? Of course, free? No. This is their fees, right? Greer being paid, and they are paid, plus they asking for so many things. And this is normal, practices. If someone asks you to give him something, to do something for you, fine.
The world that Greer took Fayed into was a hidden one that he and a few other lobbyists had created. They had turned politics into a business. Greer represented scores of large corporations and newly privatised companies. All of them wanted to exert pressure on Parliament. And Greer knew that in the new climate of enterprise, MPs would be eager to help, provided the companies offered them favours in return.
I played a major part
in making sure that commercial interests were better understood by government ministers and members of Parliament. For that I make no apology at all.
But in the process, you
placed
placed temptation in the path of MPs.
In the process, expectations were raised, perhaps by me, unconsciously, perhaps by my clients, that there is a honeypot here and you can partake of that. And I think that this culture certainly demonstrated itself in the behaviour of some members of Parliament who did take advantage of their position and did become greedy.
The politicians had created a vast boom through deregulation, and the lobby industry had become a mechanism for feeding the fruits of that boom back into politics. Politicians wanted to cash in on the very thing they had created. But Tiny Rowland would not give up on his vendetta. He knew that the government had commissioned a report into the Fayeds' takeover of Harrods, but were refusing to publish it. So Rowland then did what he was best at. He bribed an official and got hold of a copy of the report. And then he published it. The report said that the Fayeds had lied about where their money came from. To many it meant they should never have been allowed to buy Harrods.
Good evening. An official Department of Trade report says the Fayed brothers lied repeatedly to the government, the Office of Fair Trading and their own board during their successful bid to take over the House of Fraser store chain, which includes Harrods. But the Trade Secretary, Nicholas Ridley, told the Commons it would not be in the public interest to disqualify them from being company directors.
The government's refusal to do anything caused a scandal, and Mohammed Al-Fayed and his brothers became despised figures. They were attacked in Parliament as crooks and thieves, and the MPs he had paid to defend him said nothing.
A great many of us, both inside this House and far more, I think, outside this House, will feel astonished that he is not now going to take action to disbar those directors of the House of Fraser who have been so seriously criticised in his report.
They have obviously perjured their background, and if they and that they should be deported as undesirable aliens. We don't want them here. They're crooks.
Mohammed Al-Fayed retreated to the castle he had bought in Scotland. He was furious. He had been dropped by the MPs he had lavished money and gifts on, and he was being attacked in Parliament for being corrupt. To him it was gross hypocrisy, because he knew that many MPs were just as bad as he was.
I just really felt betrayed, completely betrayed. You can just imagine that people can behave like that. You know, I'm a major investor, I'm a major employer. I have 30,000 people working for me. 30,000 people, right? How can they do that? This is the people, you know, because they're trash of the trash, right? This is the problem. And these are the people who are example, the people elect and put in power. It's just devastating. You can't just see how great country like that, with great history, with great civilization, you can just go find yourself ruled by a bunch of crooks, and people have no moral, have no ethics, have nothing.
Fayed was angry because he was rejected by a society which he knew was doing much worse things than anything he'd ever been accused of, and criticised for doing things which he felt were happening throughout the Conservative Party. People were taking money for arms deals, that government ministers were engaged in corrupt practices, and that MPs were taking money to perform favours in Parliament. There's an increasingly corrupt relationship between Parliament and business, which allowed business to bend Parliament to its will.
In 1990, Mrs. Thatcher was forced out as leader of the Conservative Party. She was succeeded by John Major. He saw himself as a strong man who was going to reassert control over the markets. Above all, he wanted to prevent the damaging fluctuations in the value of the pound. His solution was to take Britain into what was called the exchange rate mechanism. The value of the pound was fixed to Europe's strongest currency, the Deutschmark. It would no longer be at the mercy of the currency speculators.
All my adult life, I've seen British governments driven off their virtuous pursuit of low inflation by market problems or